Give me a moment. I'm presenting myself. Hope you are able to see my screen.
We are.
Yeah. Okay. So this session would be on modern cloud software architect and DevOps. And my screen is not moving. Yeah. So I'm introducing Andre Anderson, and he's the cloud portfolio lead for Sogeti Sweden and former CTO and co-founder for a tech startup with 70 employees across 3 continents. And second time as Sogeti, and he has the total 7 years in Sogeti as of now, and 20 years of software development and architect experience, and 10 years with cloud. And he is also leading some of the cloud portfolio over there, and also so I believe like this would be the interesting session for all of us, and you can enjoy. So Andrea, can I start with the Pulse survey for it?
Yes, you can. Let's do that first.
Or if you want, you can introduce yourself a little bit more about yourself.
No,
And
I think you captured it pretty much. I have another silly title, and it's Chief Cloud Architect. I don't like to use it because but you know, I'm all grounded in tech, right? Even though portfolio stuff is a lot of sales and sales enablement, I come with a very heavy tech sentiment in that, so I don't really cater to the corporate lingo and buzzwords a lot. So you'll be hearing some interesting things today, I think.
okay, wonderful. So let me share my screen to take a pulse of it. Okay, just give a moment, Prashanta. I'm working on it. And it came late, so yeah. So I was working on it.
Yeah, that's my fault. I got done with the slides literally 5 minutes ago.
Yeah, no, just
A real agile way of working,
We're agile, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was quite interesting yesterday, right? We had a lot of nice sentiment. I think that given the pulse we had yesterday, were a lot of developers in the room, or software people. So I wanted to cater to the same kind of audience with this with this presentation as well. So I kind of pivoted kind of last minute here. Okay. So the first question here is, what software patterns do you use today when you're building your applications to your customers? I'm not going to mention any examples here because I don't want to kind of influence the responses here. So whatever comes to mind, the first couple of words that come to mind that you use in your day-to-day job today, not what you want to use, but what you're actually using today. It can be anything. There's no wrong answer here.
So, Andre, I want to give 2 minutes to all the participants to download menti.com and use this code to give their answer.
Absolutely. We have time.
Yeah. We can see like so many answers are still are coming out, right? So now you need to give Andre answer, like, which one is the correct one so that people can.
No. There are no wrong or correct answers here. Maybe agile is a little bit on the operational or way of working way. What I'm interesting to see here is creational singleton, observable pattern. Is it possible to get this as a word cloud instead? Or can you scroll so we can see some more answers? Structural. Okay, some Power Platform stuff as well. Factory. TQRS, interesting. Power Apps. So agile is more the way of working. What I'm looking for here is software patterns, like architectural wise. Solid. Okay, cool. I want to hear more about that oops pattern. Just kidding. Repository pattern. Top to bottom, okay.
Something different, zero. Yeah.
So some of the traditional ones would be maybe an N-tier architecture, a 3-tier architecture, or stuff like that. Microservice design pattern, cool. Okay, my phone is blowing up, so I'll just mute that one. Bridge pattern, okay. Some of you are using, creating some microservices. That's cool. Once we open up the floor, I'd like to kind of see what is here. So Agile is not a software pattern. That's more of the the way of working. So what we're asking for here is more on the sense of maybe what are the software patterns like N-tier architecture, event sourcing, or CQRS, or whatever it might be that you are using. Facade pattern, sure. Okay, cool. See, I think we have like a bunch of answers here in the.
So far, 121 people have answered. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people have answered right now. A good portion of like both PaaS and IaaS as well. It's interesting to see. All right. Some of you are starting to use DevOps already. That's good. Cool. Some people are starting to use Bicep already. That's very nice. So for you who don't know, Bicep and ARM and Terraform are syntaxes, or whatever you want to call it, a schema for defining your infrastructure in the cloud. Where Terraform is, an agnostic one. Works with both AWS, Google, and Azure. Meanwhile, ARM and Bicep are offsprings of Microsoft, where Bicep is kind of the new one, but then translates into ARM. Both, and ARM is based on JSON, and Terraform is, let's say, YAML, right? Might be wrong. Aggregates, cool.
So, Andrew, do you want us to wait for more response, or
I think we might. Let's move to the next one.
Okay.
And this one is a little bit trickier for you. So what are the difficulties that you face in your architecture and development work today? It can be, it's a very open question, right? But if you look at the technical side of things, what goes wrong today? And this is really, I think at least this is anonymous, so you can go ahead and type whatever you want. Nobody's going after you for typing something. Something you won't get in trouble if I put it that way. So anything that you feel is kind of a little bit difficult with your work today. What are those type of issues? It can be architectural stuff, or deployment stuff, or when you're coding your stuff.
So responses are coming now, Andre. So.
Yeah. Deployment issues, encoding issues, version controlling. The architecture profession is in transition. Awesome answer. Whoever said that, please raise your hand. I love you. That's amazing. I actually wanted to put in a slide and a little bit on the architecture elevator today. I had to get rid of it because I didn't have time to kind of prepare it. Maybe we can, if we have time, we can talk a little bit about the architecture elevator. For project planning, yeah, I mean that's something that we have been haunted by for 20 years, right? If not more. Client requirement clarity, interesting. Coding challenges. I also saw multi-threading up there as well. That's concurrency stuff is hard, right? And once you start bringing that into cloud and you start moving those around into different microservices, it becomes 10 times more complicated. Making all things continuous in one push and maintain the infra. Interesting. Okay, someone's raised their hand. Yogini, please unmute and kind of elaborate if you wish. You don't have to, but if you wish. That was an amazing answer. If you want, please unmute and otherwise we can take it later. No pressure. Performance issues. Okay, automation. Yeah, automation is difficult in the beginning. It becomes, but start somewhere, right? It's API, less skill set. Okay. So many people I'd like to hear from right now, but maybe we will have some time in the end to kind of open up for a more open discussion. I know that we are a fair amount of people in here, so but let's try at least. Cool. Thank you so much for all the answers. I think security concerns are very important, of course. Too much code to review at once. Oh, we're not recording. Prasanta, would you want to do that, or someone, or should I? Just so we don't click on the same button at the same time and everything goes wrong.
Sorry, Andre, you want me to do something for you?
Recording, or yeah, we are recording.
Yeah, it's happening. It's happening.
Yeah, we are recording.
It's already recorded.
Okay, so I mean, it feels like there's a lot of interesting things here we could discuss. And if you will have me, I will gladly take all of these feedback. So Rishi, make sure that you collect all these answers so we can use this and we can take another session where we, can use some of these things and maybe do another one at some point. Sure.
I will do that, Andre. Yeah.
Okay, so I'll start sharing my slides so we can go through them. Let's see, how do I do this? Technology is hard, right?
And so just want to add, Andre, like after this session, we will have a quiz which has the prizes as well. So please continue with the session, and all the questions might be relevant what Andre will speak over here, right? So you just so might be the questions would be from the conversation only what you and Andre will have right now. Yeah. So please continue.
Yeah. So in the beginning, when Ramelan and Prasanta was asking me, would you want to have a couple of talks with our colleagues here in India, and I was, immediately saying, yes, absolutely, I want to. And I know this hackathon and this thing that you are on right now is a lot about DevOps. And DevOps is an extremely important topic for our day and age. We need to automate everything because especially the things that are boring, right? Who wants to do boring stuff? And so I also wanted to go into cloud, and because DevOps and cloud goes very much hand in hand, especially today. And when seeing those answers, as I said yesterday, I saw that there were a lot of people who were developers and programmers and some testers. So I felt like, okay, let's go back to the software stuff, because when you're developing in the cloud, it is kind of interesting to see what kind of patterns you want to bring to the cloud, and how you create resilient and scalable applications, because it starts with the code, right? If you're writing code that it doesn't fit that mentality, you can put it in cloud how much ever you want, and it's not going to scale well anyway. I'll skip the introduction. Hi, I'm Andre. You all know me. Rishi introduced you to me to you, sorry. So we'll start with the dev stuff, and then we will go into a couple of ops things in the end. And the first one that I want to talk to you about is properly designed microservice architecture. This is a big topic, and I only have so much time. But if you look at this thing from InfoQ from April, you can see that there are some things here that is a little bit extra interesting. Let's see if I can get this laser thing going here. Cool. So this part right here is kind of interesting. Correctly built distributed systems. In a year ago, this was here. So, okay, let me first start with, this is a diffusion of innovation curve. So you have your innovators, you have your early adopters, early majority and late majority. And the late majority is and laggards that are on the right here, that's not even here. The reason why they don't buy rotary phones anymore are because you can't buy them. The reason why they don't buy touch phones, smartphones, are because you can't buy rotary phones anymore in a store. Otherwise, they would probably do that. Meanwhile, innovators are the first people who start to use some technology. Those are the people who stand in line 24 hours before the new iPhone gets out, right? And then you have the market penetration coming here. And once it reaches this chasm here, it starts to become more of a well-adopted thing. And you can see here, for example, the correct distributed systems used to be here and here. And they really emphasize that correctly built, because a lot of people, when cloud came around 10 years ago or so, started to try and build microservices. And because we have heard the word microservices, and people who have been around for a long time has heard about service-oriented architecture and kind of the same thing. And it's kind of funny how they really put that correctly built, because a lot of people started building distributed monoliths with one big database in the center and services around it and stuff like that. And that becomes an issue when you start to scale. And we see all of these things here that has been difficult for a lot of developers to embrace, but it starts to become more and more in our day-to-day work that we use these things. And these are the ones that I'll talk about today, more or less, because I think those are the most important ones to talk about, to create a correctly built distributed system. So that's our biggest challenge today, I'd say, correctly built distributed systems. The first one I'd like to talk about is domain-driven design, or abbreviated DDD. It's both a non-technical and a technical one. The first part of this is the non-technical part, where you have something called bounded context and ubiquitous language. And the ubiquitous language was coined by a gentleman called Eric Evans. He coined the whole domain-driven design thing, and it talks a lot about this. And you can find some very interesting topics on this and talks on YouTube. to dive deeper. Oh, that might be kind of good for me to mention also. I'll be kind of brief in this, just for you to use this presentation as a springboard to dive deeper into these topics, because it would be impossible for me to present enough information for you to kind of get the knowledge you want and desire. So what I want is kind of briefly touch a few topics like this, and then we can have the open conversation later, and also I'll have a list in the end. I'll distribute this on people that can be worth looking into. So bounded context is a way for you in your requirements gathering process, understand how the organization works and how people look at different things, like a customer. For example, in the sales context, a customer might look different. They might talk differently about what a customer is on a sales context than in the support context. In sales, they might look at like different things, like, okay, he or she usually buys this and this and this, and then in the support context, I might be looking at things like, is this person seeking support, and what kind of tickets has this person open up? So same person, different contexts. And the ubiquitous language helps you to kind of discern how they look at things and how you draw these boundaries between different things. Because in this context, they talk about the customer in a different way than here. So all of a sudden when you start interviewing people and you start understanding the requirements, you start to be able to find these boundaries. Now, this is this is nothing that you get right the first time. You have to try it a few times. Don't be scared to try. It takes a while. There's a couple of books out there that I can recommend for you to kind of dive deeper into this if you're much into software architecture. This is really something you should look into. It takes a couple of years to master, I'd say, but you should get started. Try it. The technical part of domain-driven design is how you reason about your models. And the models should be very close to how you describe it in this previous model here. It should be the same. So a customer, he does something and something else reacts to that. So when you create a model, you don't create a plain class with just the properties. You create a class and you call those are aggregates. And in those aggregates, you also create the methods that you use to manipulate that object. And you can see here, for an example, you have a backlog item and you're a product. So this is kind of from an agile process. So you have a task and you have a product ID and you have some other things here. So this is the transactional boundary, it's called. So when you want to load or save a backlog item, you need to load all of these things as well. So you have consistency between these things. This is very important, and that means that every aggregate that you design needs to be small enough so it makes sense to load and save everything at once. And once you start to have relationships between them, you don't want to have tight coupling between them. So you only reference a backlog item with its ID to the product, for an example. And when you need to react and change something on this side, you use something called a domain event. And you have some kind of process here that reacts and changes the information on this side when something happens here. And that is, normally something we call eventual consistency. Can be tricky to wrap your head around, but I just wanted to mention these things so you can, go and look at it in your own time later, because it would be very difficult to kind of get the whole concept in a few minutes. The second pattern or architectural choice is CQRS. It's an abbreviation for Command Query Responsibility Segregation. That's a mouthful. Let me just take a sip of something. Oh, so CQRS means that you have one write model and you can have multiple read models of the same thing, because data is cheap. You have one source of the truth, that's your write model. So for an example, you create something, you create a new product in your product database, for an example, and you want to have a list of the most newly created products, the top 10 products, for example. You might want to have a separate read model for that, so it's fast to load. So you have multiple ways of representing the same data. Why do we do this? Because normally you have about 90% reads of your application and 10% writes. Of course, that differs a little bit between different applications, but normally you read a lot more than you write to a database. And separating these concerns makes it a lot more performant to create applications. You don't have to do a lot of joins in your application database, and you can pre-compute the information that is loaded on the screen. You have multiple screens that might involve a product, for an example. You might want to have one with, for an example, the reviews of the application, of the product. How many stars has it gotten, for an example? And you might have a different one that with reviews that kind of update that read model once it starts receiving reviews, for an example. And that becomes much easier for you to then retrieve and show on the screen. So CQRS, very good topic to look into. The third one is called event sourcing. Event sourcing is quite different in how we normally model data and model our applications, because normally we have the current state stored in a database, right? So we have our product, we have the price, and we have the name and the picture, and same with the orders. We might have an order. Once the state of the order has changed from created to paid, for an example, we update that field in that database. And that becomes a little bit problematic sometimes, because we lose, once we update a field, we lose the previous information. We don't know what the state was before. And from a testability point of view, that becomes an issue, because we can't really track what happens during the lifetime of an object. So traditionally, we have a lot of feature specifications from the customer. We convert that into some kind of cool database table schema, and we think, now we got it. Now we can create a cool application. But with event sourcing, we start to create events instead. Like we can create different events that make sense to the customer. So those events should be something you can discuss with the stakeholders and non-technical people. Like, okay, so you can go to the customer and say, okay, what happens first? Okay, so the person creates an order. Cool. What happens then? Okay, he goes and pays for the order, or he does something else. So you can start finding out the actions and what happens next. And then you record those things into an event log. So when a user started with creating a shopping cart, then it starts to add things to the cart or remove something from the cart. And then the shopping cart gets checked out. All of these are events. Now, similarly to the CQRS, where you have write and read models, you have the same thing here, and you call it projections, where you have a representation of the sum of all these logs. So for an example, you have these things becomes a representation of a shopping cart. I hope that makes sense. Now, this is very different. It takes a little bit of practice, but it creates tremendous value in finding bugs, finding new ways of representing data. Because if you update information, remove information, all of a sudden you can't go back and show different views of that information. So very useful to create resilient applications. Because the cool thing is you can go back in time, scrub back in time and see, okay, what happened? What was the state of that projection? And then move forward in time. The fourth and last architecture that I wanted to showcase today is event-driven architecture. And this is the most important one, in my opinion, because this is the way we have for us to create resilient systems in the cloud. And the reason is that when we have multiple things in the cloud that should communicate with each other, we have a problem, because the connection between the catalog service and the basket service in our ordering kind of story here might be broken. Someone might have, turned off this basket service. What happens with all of these things I want to communicate with the basket service? Well, they would have to retry or go back to the caller and say, sorry, can't do that right now. I can't place your order. Then the customer goes to another site and buys it from another competitor instead. So to create resilient applications, we use something called event-driven architecture. And it is similar to event sourcing in the sense that we use events. And we send those as messages on something called an event bus or some kind of eventing mechanism. And these very simple, on the surface at least, simple things specialize in one thing and one thing only, and that is receiving and sending information. And if that service goes down, that event that you see here will stay here until this service comes up again, and that can resume operations. Now, a lot of you might think, okay, what happens if I need a response back immediately? That's a tricky question, but there are tricks to do to create your application in a way that allows you to think about and reason about how you will develop the rest of the application around some of these downsides, I'd say. So it's not a silver bullet for everything, but it allows you to create scalable applications. For an example, you can deploy this independently of this service, for an example, without it being affected. So that's one way to create a resilient system in the cloud or on premise, but mostly on cloud, I'd say. Okay, so we are on the ops part, and we have one pulse for you here as well. Rishi, would you like to show that?
Yeah, sharing my screen. Hope you are able to see my screen.
We are.
Yeah.
So the question is fairly straightforward. Do you use DevOps and CI/CD way of working today? Yes or no? I use FTP. That is very honest of you.
Maximum answers are yes.
Yeah, that is extremely good to say.
Yeah.
I'd say maybe 30% no,
Yep.
70% yes, maybe.
So here the audience are very honest, I can say. Need more responses so that we can get a view of it, so that we can start working on those things as well.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
requesting all the participants to participate in this pulse, so that we will come to know how we are working on. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people typing their answers in chat. Guys, please go on to menti.com and use this code 24298972. It would record your result in the Menti one, and then we will be able to see it in the screen. If you provide it on the chat, of course we see it, but here it is the way where we say. Thank
And
you.
we can see that people are answering with 3 yes as well. So they are implementing more DevOps. I think so.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, DevOps is, CI/CD is a part of DevOps, I'd say. DevOps is a little bit more than that, but CI/CD is, of course, the kind of the fundamentals.
Yeah.
I'm sure you have a lot of cool sessions now, and trying it out in these hackathon sessions. I've seen some shares on LinkedIn and things like that you're doing some sessions around what DevOps is and how you can do it. Really cool. Okay, so we got over 100 responses now. I think that is kind of decent, at least. A bit more no's now. Would like to get hands-on. Absolutely cool. And a good thing is that it's fairly easy to get started. If depending on what kind of cloud you are on, if you are on Azure, you can use Azure DevOps. If you have a Visual Studio subscription, you can create your own free Azure DevOps environment and start messing around with it. And the way you can do that, if you have a subscription, is go to, I'll type this in chat, https my.visualstudio.com and log in with your Capgemini and Sogeti.com address. And there you can see what kind of subscription you have. If you have one, it should be tied to your Capgemini account. And there you can also, if you haven't already, activate an Azure subscription with monthly credits, so you can start, testing things in the cloud. All right, 122 answers. Cool. All right, so I think I'll go through a couple of things in the ops space. Those will be a little bit more high flying. It's only 2. Bear with me.
So Andy, over to you. I'm stopping present. Yeah.
Yeah. I will have to just scroll to the right place here. Okay, so we are going into the ops space. So dev and ops obviously go hand in hand, and here's the cool thing, right? So there's something we call shift left, right? So ops is shifting left. So developers are expected kind of to know more about the ops parts, because especially when you go into cloud, it's a bit blurry line between what is operations and what is development. It's not that clear cut anymore. We start defining our infrastructure, with software, with ARM templates, infrastructure as code and stuff like that. And all of a sudden the developers should know more. Yikes, right? That's a lot more to bear. But I think, it's bearable. It's not too much to take on, but if you're new to the field, it might become a little bit, holy wow, am I supposed to know all of these things? Well, some specialize in different things, right? And that's why we have cross-functional teams. Some might be better at front end, someone might be better at creating DevOps pipelines. But the more you know, right? So one of the topics that are really, being talked about a lot right now is AI ops. And this is different from ML ops. And that means that, AI ops is when you start using AI in the context of your operations. Meanwhile, ML ops is how you deploy machine learning algorithms. And now we're talking about how to use AI ops to, alleviate some of that manual pain points in the operations part. So we don't have to sit and stare at the screen all of the time waiting for something wrong to happen, but rather have the machine allow you to focus on more productive things and more fun things, and tell you when something actually really went bad. So how you do that is, for an example, you start, with your ITSM tools, and you have your logs and your metrics coming in from your application. I hope you log and send metrics. You might send it to Splunk or Dynatrace or App Insights or what have you. There it will be collected. So when there are exceptions happening in your application, it gets inserted there, right? Or you might be putting in some kind of file or whatever. So the big part of enabling AI ops is to start logging more and sending metrics, sending how long a transaction takes and how well a server work, is feeling if you're using servers, and sending that to a central place. And then you have this, machine learning application thing in the middle that will take all that information based on the history, can detect anomalies and perform some analysis on that and correlate different events and issues that happen and contextualize that for you, and reduce the noise of things that aren't that really critical, and only send the things that are critical. So they're not waking you up at 2 a.m. in the morning for something that you don't have to fix. And that way we can shift some of that operational level left to the development team that actually knows how the application works on the inside. And this works actually with ServiceNow, something that we use in OneDeliver and in our managed services as well. So that's something that we are looking into with OneDeliver as well, to see how can we leverage AI to become even more efficient in responding to critical events that are happening in the application or on the infrastructure. Maybe some server just blew up and you need to figure out, okay, what happened, right? And that's, something, and then you want to know all about that, what happened around that server blowing up. Why did that happen? And AI can help you do that. And there's a cool software called Moogsoft that will help you do that. It integrates with ServiceNow and Dynatrace and Splunk and Application Insights and other things. There's a free version for us to test and see how it works. Really cool. So it helps you with correlating and identifying, okay, when that critical thing happened, some of that was actually caused by something in before that, and so on. So it can use some smart algorithms there. Allows us testers to also find, okay, what went actually wrong in production. The next thing is chaos engineering. It has been a thing for maybe 10 years now, but only a lot of us are starting to pick it up right now. The cool thing is that a few weeks ago, Azure actually introduced chaos engineering in Azure in a native offering, directly baked into Azure. And I know AWS also has one. So you can start injecting failure into your system directly in production or in your test environment. So the idea is that you break your application when it's running to identify if it's resilient enough for you to handle those partial failures. Like it might be turning off some ports to simulate network partition, or simulate super high CPU usage to ensure that, okay, things will still work fairly fine because we are using event-driven architecture or whatever it is. And this is something that came out of Netflix. They have open source tools for achieving this as well. There are some open source tools called Chaos Toolkit and Chaos IQ that can help you do this on premise or in AWS or Google Cloud as well. Very interesting thing. So, first you start to figure out, okay, what could go wrong with the application that we can't test when we are developing, because there are only so much things we can test in development phase. So listen up, all the testers here. This is super important. This is probably what you will be doing when we start automating away manual regression stuff and things like that. This is probably what you will be doing, because this is going to be pretty fun. Breaking things, right? That's pretty fun. So you start with, brainstorming with developers. Okay, what could go wrong that we don't really know, and then state a hypothesis, and then create an experiment and measure the results. It's kind of important that you have that logging and metrics in place with application insights or Dynatrace, so you can monitor, okay, what happens when we start breaking small pieces of the application, then learn what went wrong, and then you can fix it, and then you repeat. So it's part of the whole DevOps, continuum, I'd say. Right, those were the two things that I think is kind of cool in the operation space today. AI ops and chaos engineering. I hope that was something maybe new to you, and hopefully that is something that you can pick up sometime and look at. Like to see some solution offerings around this from Global. So I know that this was very, high flying, very quick. I would personally not remember half of what I said myself. So I have collected some information here that I'll distribute some people that you can go look for. They have a lot of good information on these topics. And feel free to reach out if you have questions on any of these topics. I could spend a whole day talking about this, but the time is running out, and now we have a quiz. Rishi.
So I was on mute. I was unable to unmute. So now I am requesting all of them to download Menti. You have already downloaded for the Pulse review, right? And it was a huge response. But this quiz is with the prizes. So requesting, I'm sharing my screen so that you can go and download menti.com and use this code. Yeah, just give a moment, please.
Sure.
Are you able to see my screen, Andrew?
Yes.
Yeah. So requesting all of you to use this code, download www.menti.com and answer the question and win prizes. And you need to answer within 30 seconds of each question. So whoever will answer in the faster way, then he will get prizes. And we have two prizes for this quiz. And it is exciting prizes. So we are not going to announce the prizes because you will become more motivated and you will answer in more quicker way. So first register over there and use this code.
Look at that, a Swedish flag in there.
Prashanta, do you also want to play this quiz?
Of course, I wish I could. But I like it. It's like, let's the audience or let the people who have learned this expertise now use this time to answer the quiz and learn more, confirm your learning. Also, yes, win your prizes as well.
So we had seen the responses around 100 or 120, but we can see the now 140, 41 has registered, right? So we can see more. They have been hided the questions, like, it's a question number 1 or 2, like as many responses we have received.
Question is not
wait
yet
for
showing.
just another minute.
Question not yet showing actually.
No,
Not
it
yet
will
started,
not
right?
show because we are just giving you the option just to first use this code and be ready for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we had
And
227 people in the call right now, and I see 148 joining. And so does that mean that we have over 80 people that don't want to win? Come on, guys.
we want all the attendees to join this quiz and win prizes. And it is an exciting prizes. So be sure about it. Yeah. Let me know, Prashanta and Andre, when we can start.
Did I make 80 people fall asleep?
Absolutely not. Maybe some people are really digesting what diagrams we have presented, a lot ideas, but we have a good number now. 160, 170 people have already logged. Rishi, what do you say, Andre?
Sure, we can go ahead now.
Yeah, just in the interest of time.
Can we start?
Yes, let's move ahead, Rishi. In the
And
interest
all
of
the participants, you will have only 30 seconds to answer for each question, and we will have 2 questions for this quiz. Yeah. So I'm starting the quiz. Let's answer it.
Traditionally, what has been difficult for the industry to get right? This was something that we talked about early in the presentation.
First guy, we have only 5 seconds left.
And there, most people has answered. Good. Very good.
Yeah, we can see maximum people have answered correctly. So
very good, everyone.
Yeah.
And then there should be one more, right?
Yeah. So it is not moving. Yeah, now it moved. So this is the leaderboard currently. Yeah. So I believe Ranjan is leading with 985 points. Vamshi is on second, and Love Site. Wonderful name you have chosen. Yeah, 974. Imran and Afreen and others, you have a luck for the next question. So please be ready. Yeah.
What is the one pattern which helps with distributed system resiliency presented today? This one can be a little bit tricky, maybe. Very good. Event-driven architecture.
Yeah, maximum people have answered correctly. Yeah. So let's see the leaderboard who is leading. Yeah.
Okay, so we might have a winner now.
Yeah. So finally, Vamshi is on first position with Afreen. Oh, sorry. Navya. I'm so sorry for it. So Navya has won this quiz. So Navya is on the first, has won the first prize. And
Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations. So you can connect with me after the session. Okay, you can ping your details with me, Navya and Ajinkya. Congratulations to both of you. And we will share the prize details with you. And also thanks to all other participants who have joined this contest. Better luck next time. We have more sessions to come. So we have already released all the mailers for other sessions. So yeah.
All right. I'd like to take the opportunity to say thank you, everyone, for joining. It was super fun for me to present to you some of the thoughts I have, and I hope that there are some interest in this space. And if you feel that there is time for some open questions, I'm happy to take some time to talk about those questions and answer. Otherwise, if you don't feel like you want to unmute now, you can also email me at any point. But if you want to, if there's any questions, feel free to type them in chat here or just unmute and talk.
So Andrew, can we give another 5 minutes to all the candidates if they have any question they can ask to you? If
absolutely.
Times, yeah. So requesting all candidates like who have joined these sessions to unmute yourself and ask your question to Andre. Feel free to ask any question, whatever in your mind. Yeah. Anyone wants to ask anything? I think your session has given the entire hands-on experience to all of them, so they don't have any question at all. So
everything is crystal clear.
We have
or I totally confused everyone.
We have a raise from Pankaja. Pankaja, you want to ask your question, maybe?
Yeah, Prashant. So, Andre, my question is like, so if I want to be a good architect, so which area I need to be give more concentration? Like I have to good in coding, or I have to give more concentration on some automation stuff or cloud, or I have good business logic. So that give me some suggestions so that it will like
Great question, and it kind of resonates with the thing that I reacted to, in the beginning of this conversation, where someone said that the role of the architects is in transition, right? And where I mentioned that architect elevator thing, and my personal opinion about architecture is that it grounds itself in the technology itself, right? So for me, for an example, I have not stopped coding. I do it on my spare time, even though I don't have the opportunity to do a lot of that in my professional life right now, just to make sure that I understand what I'm, you can sit in Visio or Draw.io and write diagrams and not really understand what happens under the hood. A great architect understands the technology, but can also take the architect elevator up to the penthouse to discuss those kind of things with the stakeholders and say, okay, talk their language, their business language, and keep an eye on the bigger picture of things, like how everything correlates. And indeed, there are a lot of things now, and these things become a lot more difficult to manage. Cloud is an ever-evolving landscape. It almost takes a full-time job to keep up on what's happening, right? But the kind of the one thing is making sure that you don't lose kind of the sense of what's happening on the ground, so to speak, coding stuff, and keep coding because it will help you make better decisions in the future. And there's one golden rule that I normally, say to fellow architects. It's try to push decisions into the future as much as possible, not delay the progress of the project, of course. But let's say, for example, you don't have to take the decision on whether to use Cosmos DB or SQL Server or something else until you come to a certain point in time. Then push that, because then you will have more information to base your decision on. So I hope that was a fairly okay answer. It's a big topic on what is architecture.
Yeah, Andre. So like I have a small doubt, like if for a architect, so does it necessary that he should have a good understanding in operating systems, like any of the if like he's from Linux administration background with cloud knowledge, does it require a good understanding of Linux operating systems?
I think that the operating system is kind of becoming more and more redundant. Of course, it makes sense. If you look at, for example, being good at Kubernetes and these things, you need someone that is really good at Linux to kind of understand the ins and outs of how it operates underneath the hood. However, there's kind of a level to of course you need to kind of understand some of the basics of operating systems. But I don't think that is really that part, that is super important. Architecture is shifting left, a lot of these questions that you had some bearded men up in the ivory tower who made decisions for the developers. That's gone now. What you do is you let the developers decide what they want to do, and the architects, they let them be a sounding board, and also help the developers take that decision, but shift that left. Let developers be more empowered in what they do, and think of the bigger picture more. But to be able to be a good sounding board, you need to have that developer focus.
Yeah. Thanks, Andre. Thanks for your valuable suggestion.
Cool. I think we have some written questions as well.
So,
but
Andre,
before we do,
there was someone raised their hand. Ajinke, are you there? You have raised your hand. So,
Yeah. Yeah, Andre. So, any resources or websites you suggest for up-to-date information, or any, like, not early adopter, but at least the ones we can reliably use in our day-to-day solutions?
Yeah, for sure. I can put them in the presentation before I send it out, but there's a couple of good websites depending on what tech stack you're using. Me, I've focused my 20 some years in most in the Microsoft stack. But a lot of that information is also reusable to if you're in Java or PHP or Python or whatever. Kind of goes, it translates very well. But there's one that is called Technology Radar. You don't have to Google for it now, but it shows what's coming, what's hot, what's what is being observed, and so on. And if you were here in the beginning, I showed a slide with that InfoQ kind of architecture hype cycle. That's also pretty good to look at. InfoQ has a lot of good material that is broadly, not only Microsoft, quite the opposite maybe, but also Microsoft Docs has a lot of information on distributed systems. I can send a direct link to where they have kind of collected a lot of that information. They also have some sample sources on GitHub where you can look at eShop on web containers, which kind of is a big repository on where they have showcased these patterns that I have talked about today, and show how we can code them. And also in here I can show this. Let's do this. Here, and then I can do this. So here are some people I feel are these are my role models. Some of them in this space. Martin Fowler, he's one of the big brains. Some of you might know him for the law of distributed objects. So his first law of distributed objects is don't distribute things if you don't have to. Then Jimmy Bogard, he's a bit easier to follow. He has a lot of good talks on YouTube. Every one of these people have that, so you can type in their name and find some good presentations on YouTube. Depends on how you normally like to learn. Some of these have also written some excellent books. The last one I bought was Von Vernon's book on domain-driven design. It's a very good book. I hope that answers your question. I'll type some of the websites here. Add websites to good resources. And then I'll distribute this presentation to everyone here. So you can have some kind of that springboard I was talking about to go and look for more resources on this topic.
Yeah, real thanks. Thanks a lot. I will go to
Sure.
them here.
Sure.
Thanks, Andre. It was a wonderful session. And I know people have more questions, but I can see the response on the quiz. Like maximum people have given the right answer. So I think they have cleared your, from the demo session, you have cleared their doubts and whatever the experience they have, right? So thank you for all your efforts, right? And we will have more session with you in future. And such hackathons will happen very frequently from our end. And we will be excited the sessions from your end.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just respond to this real quick. Going further, there will be no DevOps. It will be replaced by AIOps. No, AIOps will be augmented will augment DevOps. So it will not be replacing it. However, here's a bombshell, and I hope Joy or Mohit isn't here, but I think ITIL will be replaced by GitOps or NoOps and DevOps in the future. Maybe not to 100%, but to a big extent. So a good reason to go into DevOps.
I hope, Vishal, that cleared your questions answer.
Cool.
Yeah.
Vishal, if you want to elaborate more, let me know. Otherwise, I think we have extended this call for 15 minutes already, and people have other places to be. Thank you so much for taking the time, everyone. This was really fun. I hope we can do more of these. And please give some feedback on what you want to hear more about next. What was good? What was not so good? Was it too fast? Was it too slow? Was it too unclear?
You can see the class, Andre, on the screen. So
yeah. But I hope it was a little bit inspiring. That's what I want to do. I kind of want to inspire you to go and look for things yourself as well, because that empowers you more.
I have never seen such more claps, so many claps in one go for you. So it was an exciting session for all of us.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Have a good evening, everyone. Have a good weekend. Hope I get a couple of feedback on email as well. Sure. And I will distribute this PowerPoint shortly. I'll add those websites in there, and you will receive it in. I'll put it in here in the chat, so it's easy for everyone to pick up, or I can send it to you, Rishi, or Prasanta to kind of distribute in a different way as well.
Sure. Thanks, Andre.
All right.
Thanks all the candidates.
Have a good weekend.
Winners.
Take care, everyone.
Yeah, you can connect with me for the prizes. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thanks, Andre. Thanks once again.